Welcome back to Canada Tonight. If you've been seeing red lately, you're not alone. Pollara has released its latest Rage Index survey. The pollster says that it hit a new high in April with record levels of anger among Canadians. Now, the Rage Index measures Canadians' anger or annoyance toward 6 factors: the federal government, their provincial government, the economy, personal financial situations, certain changes happening in Canada, and the latest stories that are in the news. Dan joins us from Ottawa. Dan, good to talk to you.
I'm happy to be here. I'm not angry today. I'm happy to be talking to you.
Well, I'm thrilled to be talking to you and hearing your voice now. You've been tracking Canadians' rage for almost 2 years. How has the recent round of results differed from what you've seen before?
Well, I mean, I'll cut to the chase. It's a record high on the Rage Index. This is something we've been asking for some time. We ask 6 questions: how you feel about government, how you feel about the economy, stories in the news, and we just average together the percentage of people that are angry about all these things. And in the April edition of the Rage Index, we saw a record number of people that were angry about the economy in Canada, record number of people that were angry about government, both federally and provincially. And I think this probably all ties together. If you're upset about the economy, you're looking for someone to blame, and there's lots of blame going around these days.
So who's the angriest? Where are we going to find the most angry Canadians? What province?
Well, Ontario tops the list, and this was fielded before the Leafs went out of the playoffs too, so maybe even angrier today than they were last week when we were actually doing the survey. But yeah, Ontario actually moving into #1 spot. Alberta has generally been at the top of the list, probably because there's a lot of anger towards the federal government there. But Ontario, we're seeing a lot of economic frustration these days. I think this is driven by things like high housing prices and high grocery prices, which are affecting everybody, but maybe a bit more acute in Ontario than some other places.
I mean, affordability-wise, I'd argue BC, Vancouver feels pretty unaffordable. Why isn't Vancouver a little higher, given the price of things here? And I'm coming to the audience from Vancouver, the price of housing for sure.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately it comes down to how people feel themselves, right? And maybe people are more used to some of these factors there. Maybe things feel like they're changing quicker in Ontario. Maybe they're just in a better mood, because I mean, honestly, like whether or not you're feeling angry or happy could depend on the weather, could depend on many other things. And there is this kind of stigma people have of being a little more laid back on the West Coast. Maybe there's some truth to that, and maybe there just is a bit less frustration there at this time of the year when it's lovely in Vancouver.
It's fair. It is pretty sunny and nice out here, at least today. Alberta used to be the angriest, but you say Ontario took over. Do you have a sense as to exactly why that would have happened?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say what the specific cause is. Like as I said, it seems like there's a lot more economic frustration bubbling up in Ontario these days. One thing that we did see, speaking of BC, you're asking about here, is a pretty big jump in terms of the level of anger towards the provincial government in BC compared to past waves. This is something that for the past year and a half, anger towards the provincial government's always been at the bottom of the list in BC, and that jumped up 16 points this wave. So, it does seem like there is some growing resentment there that could be problematic given they're heading into an election year for the government there.
Okay, let's try and end this on a positive note if we can. In your conversations with Canadians, do you have a sense as to what they feel good about?
Well, I mean, look, we do ask on all these questions, are you happy or are you angry? And, we just get very few people who say they're happy about government or the economy or things like that. I mean, we did ask about the federal government, about the federal budget on this wave of research. And, people were pretty happy about the actual measures that were in the federal budget. Still pretty angry with the federal government overall. Maybe that hasn't changed things. But, I do think there are things people can look at and say, look, I'm glad someone's doing something on this front when it comes to housing or food programs. So maybe there's still an opportunity there for people to feel those emotions, but they just seem to be happening less often than maybe a couple of years ago.
Dan Arnold, Chief Strategy Officer for Pollara, with a smile on his face. Thank you.
Happy to be here.